Welcome to the third webinar of the Qigong Coaching Certification Program. I want to thank you once again for being part of our apprenticeship program, for your interest in Qigong coaching, and also for joining us today for our webinar. And if you're watching this webinar and recording, then obviously I want to thank you for watching this recording and for pursuing a certification program as a certified Qigong coach. Today, we are going to dive deeper into the exploration of the specific applications of the methodology of Qigong coach, and also how to develop the general understanding of where the person is and where they want to be. Now, this may sound like a relatively generic idea, and a lot of coaches, especially life coaches, do exactly that. They help people realize that they're not where they want to be, and then they help them transition from where they are to where they want to be, following their particular methodologies. Some life coaches also help people develop strategic plans, and we have that also as part of our method as well. I will be presenting the next webinar specifically on the planning and execution steps for creating and executing the Qigong coaching program for your clients. Before we go into the strategic planning part of our coaching methodology, I would like to look at the simple and very important aspect of our work, and that is looking where the person is at and where they want to be. As a matter of fact, many people hardly ever focus their attention on what they want. They often focus their attention on what they don't want. So just like you may recall me talking about a trip to the museum, where you may spend a whole day just bitching and moaning about a particular piece of art or exhibit that shouldn't be there. In other words, focusing on that which you don't resonate with, well, that would make this trip to the museum a really miserable experience, wouldn't it? Well, that's what many people do in their lives. They focus a lot of their attention on that which they don't resonate with. It may be related to the past, the experiences that they wish wouldn't happen, or they feel angry or frustrated or resentful or remorseful about certain things that happened in the past. And also, when thinking about the future, they often have a tendency to do the same damn thing. They focus their attention on what they don't want to experience. So they end up creating a vision of their lives in the way that they don't want them to happen. So basically, they focus on certain things that they're afraid of. They dread certain things and wish that it wouldn't happen in the future. And of course, they actually provide more and more energy to exactly that dream, only supporting the manifestation of it. So if we understand this, how energy supports the manifestation of certain dreams, it gives us a very clear idea also about how we would rather want to spend our energies. And obviously, the more we focus our energy on that which we want to experience, the more likely we'll be able to manifest exactly that. So, when we talk to our coaching clients, we want to make sure that they manage to shift their attention from focusing on what they don't want towards focusing on what they do want. How do we do that? We simply ask them, is this what you wish to experience? Or if they're talking about the past, we don't want to go into this long, drawn-out process of discussing things in the past that they wish didn't happen. We ask them, so what do you wish to happen? If we're talking about the past, what did you wish happened? Or what should have happened? And when they go into discussion about things that they should have experienced or they wish would happen in the future, they already took a very important step in the right direction, in the direction of focusing attention on what they resonate with. So we basically support them on this journey and help them redirect their attention whenever they deviate from it or digress. We help them come back on track. In other words, we keep them accountable to be focused more on things that they resonate with and less on things that they don't resonate with. Not that we never want to focus any attention on things we don't resonate with, because we won't be able to learn anything if we never pay attention to things we don't resonate with. So in other words, there is certain balance. But by and large, the more the person focuses attention on things that they resonate with, the more they will experience relaxation in the physical body, emotional sense of well-being, the energetic resonance, which feels like vibrant health, and they will also be manifesting things that they would like to manifest in their lives. So there are a lot of pros to focusing on what people want to manifest. And by and large, without focusing on things that they want to manifest, there is very little, if any, chance of them being in flow. That's right. If we consider that being in a flow is one of the key principles of Qigong coaching, well, this is how we do it. We learn how to be in the flow by paying attention to where the flow goes. If we focus on things where it's easy to flow, in other words, we resonate with certain direction, a certain course of action, then we can easily be in the flow by going in that direction. If we go in some other direction, obviously we will experience a different degree of flow, and it will not be as easy to go there. In other words, we won't be in the flow. Of course, it's not black and white, so there are different degrees of how much we can navigate the flow. We don't have to always be 100% in the flow and just stay the course all the time, even though that might be not a bad idea. But we also want to learn things. So we don't want to just enjoy the ride, even though this is an admirable way of being. We may also want to learn a great deal about life. How do we learn about life? Well, we actually have to focus sometimes on certain things we don't resonate with. But we have to do this in a way that we don't get stuck focusing on those things. And also, we learn how to transition whenever possible from things that we don't resonate with and reorient ourselves towards things that we do resonate with. As you may recall, this approach also is an easy entryway into developing greater energy awareness. Why? Because you have to pay attention to your own energy in order to be able to tell what you resonate with. Simple as that. So if the person is focusing on resonance, one of the prerequisites of that and a necessary step is to actually develop greater awareness of themselves. Focus more and more attention on themselves gives them the access to the ability to pay attention to their own energy. Obviously, energy is what we also refer to as the inner essence of our own being and the whole world. So we are learning how to switch our attention from the superficial or superfluous fluff towards the inner essence of things. And that is also what I mentioned to you, is a requirement for being a successful Qigong coach. You have to be able to do that for yourself first, or we can tap into our inner resources the more we are in touch with our human potential, the more we are in touch with the dream being, the source of the dreams that we aspire to manifest. So when we're talking about our authentic dreams, that's where they come from. They come from the deeper part of ourselves that is also part of each and every one of us. We call it dream being. We can call it spirit. We can call it the divine essence. Whatever you address, you call it soul. Whatever you call it, it is essentially the inner essence of who we are that we often know very little about. And we learn about it through developing a clear interface between the tip of the iceberg and the rest of it. The interface is called awareness. What's awareness? It's the ability to know that which you didn't know before. So in other words, you become aware of something that you didn't know before. And the more aware you become, the more access you have to the greater knowledge of things that you didn't know prior. And that means you actually access certain energy resources within yourself that you previously didn't have access to. So, how do we do that? How do we develop awareness? Well, there are several very simple and elegant ways to do that. I already mentioned to you the simple assertion that I have about people's wants and how they relate to needs. Most people tend to focus on what they want, and if they focus on what they want, that's already a very strong step in the right direction, because they're not focusing so much on what they don't want. But again, wants are not always the same as needs. In other words, we often want things that are not really our authentic dreams. We often get bombarded by social influences, by the media, by influences from certain important people or authorities that basically indoctrinate us, programming into our minds things that we are supposed to pursue. Whether it is advertising, whether it is certain religious indoctrination, or whether it's influence from our parents or other authority figures. We often start pursuing things that are not really our authentic dreams. And these are often what we think our wants are. In other words, we often perceive what is somebody else's dream as if it's our own, because it's a relatively superficial and easily changeable dream that came from elsewhere. It's extrinsically motivated. It's not intrinsically motivated. By that I mean that it's not your authentic dream, so you can't really tap into the source of that dream within yourself. It's somebody else's dream, and often it's rather superfluous. In other words, you know that you want it. And by the definition, it's already something that it's on the surface of that iceberg, on the tip of the iceberg. And then to add the insult to injury, so to speak, it's often not your authentic dream. It is something that has been imposed upon you by somebody else or society at large, or religion, or the media. And so we often confuse wants for needs. So an important step further in that direction would be to develop discernment between wants and needs. Can you discern between what you want and what you need? Do you recognize that sometimes you want things that you don't really need? And sometimes you may even pursue and get what you want. But it may turn out to be that it's not really what you needed. In other words, your needs may not be met, even though you got what you want. That's one of the reasons why I always discourage from pursuing goals and help people reorient from focusing on goals to focusing on dreams. And what I mean by dreams, these are authentic needs of ours that we also wrap into something desirable. In other words, we figure out how to integrate the wants and needs in a way that we start wanting that which we need. Now, that's a pretty slick maneuver of consciousness, isn't it? Often, people will not pay money for even to satisfy their needs. For example, the person may be thirsty, but they drink coffee. They may be hungry, but they eat comfort food. They may be lonely, but they watch pornography. In other words, people have all kinds of confused and distorted ideas about how to satisfy their needs. They often try to run away from pain and seek pleasure. And you know where that leads us. Running away from pain, for example, taking painkillers, often robs us of the ability to heal for real, because painkillers just suppress our experience of pain and do not really relieve pain at the root cause level. So we still have the same issue that was causing pain. We're just simply not paying attention to it or not feeling it. Similarly, many people drink alcohol, take drugs, or engage in some other behaviors that distract them, that allow them to escape the reality, because they want to experience pleasure instead of pain. Well, momentarily you may experience a little bit of pleasure. You may get a cocaine hit, or you may get drunk, but you may still not experience your needs getting met. As a matter of fact, often your needs suffer as a result of getting addicted to drugs or alcohol. You may also end up getting addicted to even such innocuous things as food. That's right. I was just mentioning comfort food. Well, often it has way too much sugar, way too much salt, way too much carbs. Essentially, it's not nutritional. It's not nutritiously valuable food. Often people get addicted, for example, to sugar, and they crave it and they consume it. They eat way too much sugar and they end up thinking that they're satisfying their hunger, when in fact, they're just simply ingesting more and more poison that they end up suffering from. Whether it turns into diabetes or obesity or other issues, that's the secondary story. We basically want to understand the root cause of this whole issue. And the root cause is that the person wants to run away from pain and seek pleasure. So, what does this person need? Well, the person obviously needs healthy lifestyle, healthy food. They need to experience a greater sense of belonging. They want to potentially experience greater sense of oneness with everything. All of these are much deeper needs that people often don't dig in deep enough to discover. Even when they talk to their best friends, often they skim on the surface of their values. And so in our coaching practice, we actually empower people to look at their needs and their wants and to develop discernment. How do they discern what their needs are versus what their wants are? Well, they actually need to look at their values. The values are certain snippets of beliefs that people have in their belief system that they can easily identify and relate to. So, for example, if a person relates to a certain value, say the value of honesty or integrity. It's not hard for them to think about it, and often they will take certain steps to satisfy that value, unless they are confused, unless they have a different value that may not be in alignment with the value of integrity or honesty. For example, the value of being likable, or the value of making more money. I'm sure you've met some people who would do some dishonest things or outside of integrity when they try to make money or to be liked by some other people. In other words, some other seemingly tertiary value happens to be more important to them. Most people don't really think that this is a more important value. They just simply have this value higher on the list of their priorities than the value that is really authentic and integral to them. The reason for that is because they've been indoctrinated, again, by the upbringing, society, media, religion, and what have you. They actually adopted many values from their parents, their teachers, their religious figures, or other authorities that don't really reflect their authentic dreams. It's somebody else's dream. But because the person who adopted these values perhaps wasn't really doing it consciously, whether it's because the person is so young that they don't have the capacity to really discern the value or assess the value that is being presented to them, or it's been done in such an insidious kind of unconscious manner that person just gets brainwashed and doesn't really recognize that they've just assumed a new value. Often they end up with values in their belief system that are far from being their own authentic values. And that is the reason why they have wants that don't match their needs. That's the reason why they often pursue goals that are not their authentic dreams. That's the reason why people often get stuck on the tip of the iceberg without ever connecting to the deeper part of the iceberg. In other words, they never connect with their true essence or their soul or their spirit. Well, that is what we help them if they find it valuable. So if they are in alignment with this approach, they become your ideal clients. If they don't care about pursuing their needs and satisfying their needs, if they don't care about doing that which would bring them closer to manifestation of their purpose in life, then obviously you are not going to coach them. They will not find it important enough to pay for that coaching. And even if you offer it for free, they will not find it important enough to stick with it. And so we don't try to impose coaching on people who don't find what we offer valuable. But for those people who do want to connect with their true essence, who do want to manifest and live their authentic dreams, who do value the pursuit of their life's purpose, we have a lot to offer. Now, this is what I would call an irresistible offer to the right people. We basically offer them something that hardly anyone else can offer. How do we do that? Well, we engage the person in re-evaluation of their values. We literally invite them to create a list, writing down the values that they can think of. all values that they can think of, we ask them to write down. And then we ask them to prioritize these values according to what is really important to them. So obviously, when they're jotting down values, they may not come out in the perfect lined up order of importance. No problem. We ask them to reevaluate values and align this list according to the order of importance. And then we start asking them again, are these the real highest values that happen to be on top of this list? Are those values that further down are less important? Because they do have certain distinct levels of importance. If the person is so confused that they think all the values are equally important, we simply ask them, would you imagine doing this exercise? You probably have heard of the exercise, just imagining that your house is burning and you have just 10 seconds to run into the house, grab something of the top priority to you, and run out of the house before it collapses. Now, imagine that we are talking about the values. You only can save 3 or 4 top values, 5 maximum. What are those values? And that exercise will make the person ponder, what are my real values? And that exercise will actually force them to consider, what if I don't have any other values? I only have this handful of values and I cannot have any others. What would the values be, the ones that I save, that I take with me out of a burning house, so to speak? And so we ask them to write down those values. And then we ask them to prioritize those values according to order of their priority. That's right. It actually will make it easier for the person because they've already started the process of assessing the value of their values. In other words, they're doing something that most people have never done in their lives, reevaluating their values. When you reevaluate your values, you will know a lot better what is essential to you and what isn't. And it's also not carved in stone. In other words, over time, the values may shift. Their priorities may change. And that is a healthy thing. You are more than welcome to continue exploring your values and reevaluating them so that you are staying appraised to the most current order of priorities of your values. That will make it possible for you to make decisions that pursue the highest priority values for you. And those decisions that try to pursue the lesser priority values will have to be on the back burner, or they will have to take the back seat. They have to wait until the higher priority values are being addressed. Now, it doesn't mean that you will never get to them. As long as they are in the list of your priorities, at least the high-level priorities, they will need to be addressed as well. It's just that we have to address our top priorities first. If we pursue our lesser priorities first and put the top priorities aside, you may feel really dissatisfied, even though you may get those priorities taken care of that were a lower status. So again, you may even get what you wanted, but if your higher priority values or your needs are not met, you're not going to be happy camper. That, my friend, is exactly what serves as a cornerstone of Qigong coaching. It's a very crucial and very simple process of reevaluating values, and the person will never be the same once they have gone through it. So I want you to do this homework yourself. I want you to create a list of your values and prioritize them according to your current order of priorities. Can you do that? I believe you can. And once you have done it, you will connect with a deeper part of your iceberg that will allow you to connect with a deeper part of other people's icebergs, so to speak. In other words, you'll be able to communicate from heart to heart or from soul to soul. You will be able to connect with the dream being of another person because you know how to connect with yours. Now, we also want to facilitate their ability to connect with their dream being. And as the name implies, dream being is the being that is dreaming up their dreams, that kind of bubble up to the surface, and then the person becomes aware of those dreams, and then often they want to pursue those dreams, especially if they have learned how to focus on things of high priority to them, authentic dreams instead of some superfluous ones that are extrinsically motivated. How do we facilitate it? We simply ask them about their dreams. That's right. We're talking about mostly daydreams. Some people want to manifest their night dreams, but most people want to manifest their daydreams first and foremost. And often people forget how to daydream. They might have been oppressed or chastised in their childhood for daydreaming too much. Their parents or their teachers, they might have chastised them for daydreaming and floating somewhere in a cloud, so to speak, instead of focusing on something that the teachers or the parents deemed important. The funny thing is that it actually robs the child of the ability or the skill to focus attention on their dreams and refocuses the attention on some other people's dreams of their teachers, parents, or some other authority figures. In other words, we actually have to reparent them. We have to provide them the permission and give them the opportunity to daydream again. How do we do that? We ask them, what is it that you would like to experience in your life? For example, a year from now, where would you like to be in your life, in your career, in your finances, in your relationships, in terms of your personal development or social dynamics? Where would you like to be in your life in a year from now? How about 2 years from now? How about 5 or even 10 years from now? Some people have big dreams, but often they have been so punished for having big dreams that they make the dreams smaller and smaller and smaller. So we actually give them permission to dream big. We encourage and empower them to dream big. We serve as a role model of somebody capable of dreaming big. And we ask them to share those dreams with us. Now, we don't have to put a label, this is a small dream and this is a big dream. We just simply ask them to continue dreaming, to continue coming up with more and more motivating and inspiring dreams and visions for themselves, and what that would do for the rest of the world. So they may not be dreaming just for their own sake. They may also dream for the sake of their family. Once they've done that, we can ask them, how would this dream affect the life of people in your community or in your company or in your circle of influence? How will this dream of yours affect the lives of people and other living beings in your vicinity, in your city or town or your county or your state? Maybe your dream is big enough to affect people and living beings throughout your entire country or your entire continent. Maybe the entire world will be influenced by your dreams. Now, that would be pretty impressive. Let's see how you can detail what the dream would look like, what you will feel like when you are living that dream. You literally encourage and empower a person to focus their attention more on their daydream. For some people, it may be scary because, like I said, they've been punished for daydreaming. Some people have been spending most of their attention focusing on things they don't resonate with. And so for them, it's almost like a sense of guilt or, again, fear to focus on things they do resonate with. Some people are just so busy struggling in their lives that they don't daydream at all. So obviously, we have compassion for them, and we simply continue asking them more questions about their dreams, about the details of their dreams, and also how they will need to be so that these dreams would manifest. Now, I will dedicate a separate, very important webinar specifically to this question, the ontological question: how would you need to be so that you would be able to manifest your dream? But before we go there, we need to connect with the dream, make it more vibrant, more appealing. Ask the client about details of the dream. How would you know that you've actually achieved what you aspire to achieve? How would you feel when you achieve that? What do you experience when you look around? Visually, what do you hear? Maybe you have a certain sense of smell. Maybe you have a certain sense of touch or taste associated with being in the dream. Maybe movement. Now that is something that we'll again have a special webinar dedicated to, because kinesthetic awareness is not something that most people develop in their bodies. As a matter of fact, kinesthesia, the sense of movement, is so underdeveloped that most people don't even have it in their vocabulary. They don't even know what kinesthesia is. They don't even think about it. If you don't have the word in your vocabulary, how often will you think about it? Probably never. That's exactly what happens to most people. They never develop kinesthetic awareness of movement. And that, my friend, is what we call sixth sense. That's right, the sixth sense added to the other five senses: sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. Kinesthetic awareness is the sixth sense, and we will dedicate a specific webinar to developing it because it actually gives you access to energy awareness. You can experience it firsthand. That's right, not looking at energy through the sense of sight, not listening to it through your hearing, not smelling it or touching it, which is second-hand experience of energy. We actually experience movement, which is the first-hand experience of life force moving in your body. And that is how we develop the sixth sense. And that is how we learn how to tap into the energy resources that most people don't even know they have, because they don't have the sixth sense developed. Now, what I would like to wrap our today's webinar with is the exploration of what to do once the person learned how to daydream and thereby connected with the source of daydream, with the dream being the deeper part of the iceberg, the creator of the dreams. They literally assume a new identity for a moment, the identity of the creator of the dreams. That's right. Not only are they the creature in the dream, the small entity that kind of lives in the dream world, they actually created the dream world. So they become no longer the subject, but rather the object. They are actually the creator of the dream, or they can still be the creature. They can still live in that world. So they actually bridge the gap between the creator and the creation, something that most organized religions have never managed to achieve throughout their entire history. Do you know of any organized religion that actually managed to integrate what it's like to be the creator and the creation? I would like to hear if you have any opinion about that. I personally have never heard of any such religion, and that's what most of them aspire. That's what they wish for, or they hope that would happen. So, in other words, we actually have a very simple and elegant methodology for achieving that which most spiritual paths hope to achieve, but fall short. Now, that is also a very important offer that we make to our coaching clients. We help them achieve the holy grail of whatever religion they believe in. Doesn't matter their religion, doesn't matter their particular tradition or lineage. Most of them aspire to bridge that gap between the creator and creation, become one with the creator. Well, how do you do that? Through dreaming. Daydreaming in this particular case, but also lucid night dreaming, which is something that we study in the context of dream yoga. We will have the whole module of our apprenticeship program dedicated to it, as you know. What we do, and when we support and facilitate the daydreaming process of our coaching clients, is we ask them questions like, so what is this going to do for you? If you achieve certain thing or you reach certain goal, what is it going to do for you? What is it going to do for your family, or what is it going to do for your community? And they basically start digging a little deeper. Why do you want to achieve that? Is another really good question. They actually have to consider their values. Again, making full circle, we come back to assessing and utilizing our knowledge of our values. If the person who reevaluated his or her values, then they will be able to rely on their values and answer this question very intelligently, why they want to pursue something. And then we ask them, how well will your needs be satisfied? In other words, we want them to actually be aware of the level of satisfaction of their needs. And if their needs are not fully met, or not met even to the level of like 80 or 90%, that means something is missing. They need to dream bigger. Of course, we also ask them about the current level of satisfaction with their needs. And we often even do this before we talk about dreams. I actually have this whole development of the coaching program where we often start with asking the person about the current level of satisfaction of their needs. And we break down their needs into 6 really simple sectors, kind of like a pie chart. If you consider pie being like a circle, you can divide it into 6 slices. Kind of like you would cut pizza into 6 slices. And each slice has a name. It represents a particular sphere of life. Of course, some people say, I have more spheres of life than 6. Some people may say, I don't even have that many, which is okay. Some people have only 5. Some people have 7 or 8. I like the number 6. It's actually a very essential number being used a lot in Qigong. 6 directional movements, 6 holding patterns, 6 chakras in the physical body. We work with 6 realms of being, and so on. We basically ask the coaching client to draw a circle. And once they have drawn a circle, to divide it into 6 slices. And then we ask them to write down the name for each slice, which basically is associated with a particular realm of being or a particular area of their life. And the first one, obviously, should be health and wellness, because that's one of the reasons why people seek Qigong. They want to become healthy and feel well. Well, how great is the level of your current satisfaction with health and wellness? Now, some people may divide it into several subsections, or at least they can compartmentalize health and wellness. Perhaps we don't have to do that. If the person needs that, yes, we can do it, but we don't have to. And we ask them to assess the level of satisfaction on a scale from 1 to 100. I like to go from 1 to 100 rather than from 1 to 10 because it allows for much greater precision. And also, it kind of reminds the person to measure that which they resonate with, their needs being satisfied. We're not measuring things like pain. For example, often you go to a doctor's office and they ask you, well, how strong is your pain? Can you tell me on a scale from 1 to 10? We're not measuring pain. We don't measure things that we don't want. We actually measure and pursue things that we resonate with. And that means that we measure the level of satisfaction of our needs. What's the second slice on this pie chart? Let's call it career and finances. Again, for some people, this may be 2 distinct areas of life, career in one and finances the other. Or they may not have any career. They just inherited a bunch of money, and that's basically the only thing that constitutes their finances. For some people, they may be retired. For some people, they may not really have any finances or not even have any career. Obviously, we can ask them to assess the level of satisfaction of their needs in this area of life. Now, some people will say, I want to be a millionaire. I want to be a billionaire. Well, those are your wants. But we're looking at satisfying your needs. Sometimes you do need to have $1 million to be able to afford your lifestyle or support a family. In many cases, you don't. So again, we actually want to focus on our needs as opposed to our wants. Now, for some people, it's never enough. So they want more and more money, so their finances are never satisfying enough. Well, we invite them to reevaluate their values to see what is it that's really driving them to keep getting more and more and never feel satisfied. In other words, we actually invite them to imagine what it would be like to actually achieve a higher level of satisfaction and start assessing where they're at the present moment in relationship to that high level of satisfaction that they can dream up. Same applies also to other spheres of life. For example, next one, let's call it hobbies and sports. Maybe not the most important area of life for some, but if we include Qigong in this area, well, that suddenly becomes a lot more important for Qigong practitioners or Qigong coaches. We also can include other hobbies or sports, for example, anything from tennis or golf to collecting stamps, philately, or maybe going to theater, and so on. Some of this may be intermixed with other areas of life, so we want to identify what it is that actually constitutes your interests in terms of hobbies or sports. And then maybe also beyond sports. For example, well, hunting actually for some reason is called sportsmanship. most cases it's not really being a sportsman, but for whatever reason it's often referred to as sports of some sort. Now, it may also be scuba diving, it may be traveling around the world, it may be macrame, whatever the hobbies are, and sports maybe. How satisfied are you in that area? Again, where would you like to be if you just allow yourself to dream big? Now, you may realize that you may never become a world champion at your sport, or you may never become a Michael Jordan, for example, playing basketball. Okay, but what is it that would really satisfy your pursuits in this particular area? So that's basically is a high aim. Now, where are you at this particular moment in time in relation to that? And again, on a scale from 1 to 100, we can assess where the person is in relation to where they want to be. How about the next area? Let's talk about intimate and family relationships. And perhaps some other relationships, maybe outside the family, but we have a separate slice of our pie chart dedicated to social life. So let's not mix them together. Again, some people may not have any relationships. They may be loners, or they don't have a partner, for example, at the time. Okay, well, how satisfied are you with this area of your life? How would you need to be, and what would it be like if you actually had a very high level of satisfaction? It doesn't have to be 100%, but certainly close to 100, maybe 80 or 90%. And again, where are you in relation to that objective? Same principle applies to this area of life as it does to others. Essentially, we learn how to refocus our attention from what we don't want or don't like or don't appreciate, and focus on that which we would appreciate, which we would like, which we would resonate with. So if somebody has some trouble in their relationships and started bitching and moaning about it in the context of a coaching session, we want them to quickly refocus, and we basically will draw the line and say, okay, thank you for sharing with me the troubles that you are going through or what happened in the past, but where would you like to be? And what's the level of satisfaction that you currently have in relation to that high mark? Again, we don't want to indulge and let our clients indulge in storytelling. Storytelling is very important in the context of marketing, and we'll be learning about it in our module dedicated to business development. But when we're coaching, storytelling is much less valuable. The next sector of our pie chart is dedicated to social life and social contributions. So here are our friendships and our community, and perhaps our commune or whatever may be included. Here we also may include contributions that we want to make to our society. So when we talk about how will your dream affect the lives of other people, or lives of your entire community, or your entire country? Well, this is where we look at that, and again, assess where the person is currently. What's the present state of affairs as compared to what you would like your dream to be in terms of your contribution, or what kind of a legacy you would like to leave behind? Same thing also applies to the next area of life, that is personal and spiritual development. As you can understand it by now, I'm pretty adept at personal development and spiritual development. Some people don't even consider that an important area of their lives. Some people do. I can consider it an important area of my life, and I encourage people who I work with to consider that as an essential aspect of their life, so that it occupies its own slice on this pie chart. Sometimes their social life may be intermixed. For example, they just go to church and that's as far as their spiritual life goes. Sometimes people participate in some meditation retreats and they consider that their community, and at the same time, they also participate in certain spiritual development process. Some people don't really consider themselves very spiritual, but they do have certain personal development objectives or dreams. And we talk to them about it. What is your dream in regard to your personal development or spiritual development? What would it be like if you actually managed to manifest it? How satisfied would your needs be in regard to personal and spiritual development if you manifest your dream? Where are you now at the current state of affairs in relation to the dream state? Now, you can see that this is a very important journey around all the different 6 spheres of life. For some people, they may be intermixed, like I said. Somebody may be a professional athlete, so for them, maybe career and sports are integrated into one. For some people, there may be personal development gurus, and so for them, personal development and business, a career, are intrinsically connected, and so on. The idea is that we recognize that there may be some overlaps, and at the same time, we also want to identify the areas that are really well developed in that person's life, so they are already at the high level of satisfaction currently. And also identify the areas of weakness, where they are at the lower level of satisfaction. What will it do for us? It will help us identify the areas that need more help. Which ones do you think those are? Pretty obviously the ones that have lower level of satisfaction. And we don't even want to tell this to our clients. We want to ask them, so out of all of these 6 areas, which one do you feel needs more help? Which one do you feel is less developed and would need to be empowered? Simple question, obvious answer, but we want them to come up with that answer rather than us telling them. Why? Because then they will be able to commit to it. When they say, I totally see it. For example, my health is the culprit. Without me being healthy, I cannot have my career develop any further. I won't be able to play my sports. I won't be able to sustain my relationships. I won't. My spiritual and social life will be unsatisfying. I need to work on my health. Okay, great. Then we can actually look at health and wellness and also break it down into specific areas. For example, physical health, emotional health, nutrition, exercise, rest, and sleep. And what happens is that the person may also identify certain areas of strength and certain areas of weakness within that particular sphere of life. So, for example, if they say, my physical health is the one that is at the low level of satisfaction, all others are doing all right. Well, then we can actually ask them to assess their entire physical body and identify particular parts of the body that hurt or that are weak or that are injured or disempowered. And that will give us an opportunity to help them bring attention and thereby bring energy which will empower that part of the body, help get it more integrated, and develop a culture movement that will actually support the use of that part of the body much more functionally and with greater level of enjoyment. So this is just one little example. For example, if the person says, my mental health is the culprit, in other words, other areas of my health and wellness are doing all right, but my mental health, for example, my stress level is just through the roof. I may be doing exercises, maybe eating healthy. I may not feel a lot of aches and pains in my body, but I'm just constantly stressed out. Okay, well, we know how to help them with that. right? Remember how we create stress in our lives? By focusing on that which we don't resonate with and not learning from our challenges. So we basically recreate our challenges. We dread that would happen again. We dread the fact that they did happen. So basically, we don't perceive them as learning opportunities, we perceive them as problems. And then we also stress out about the future, how these problems will occur again, or some other problems will trouble us. And so basically, that's how we create depression, anxiety, and just overall undue level of stress. Well, if we know how we do it, and if we do it consciously, then we can also stop doing it. So we engage the person in exploration of their mechanism of stress making and invite them to consider alternatives, which obviously alternative would be, well, learning how to develop discernment, allowing them to focus attention on more things that they resonate with, less attention on things that they don't resonate with, and develop the ability to learn from the lessons that life presented to them, and so on. So the same principles can be applied to nutrition, to rest and sleep, and so on. Obviously, rest and sleep also depend on physical health. For example, if a person is in chronic pain, they will have a hard time resting or sleeping. If they are stressed out, they may wake up in the middle of the night and stay up because they just can't relax enough to fall asleep. So we obviously can help them release the stress and then facilitate better rest and relaxation. We also can engage them in a process of learning how to do relaxation from head to toes or from toes to the head. It's a very simple method that I actually integrate into our initiation into the practice of empowerment. When the person lies down on the floor and imagines the wave of relaxation moving through the body. By the time they go from the toes to the head, they are usually pretty relaxed and often in a very deep hypnotic trance. So you will learn how to do that. And also you will learn how to facilitate pretty much any other aspect of person health and wellness, as well as other areas of life, in a way that they can empower them and improve the quality of life with their needs being met in that particular area of life. Now, I will dedicate the next webinar of this module to going over this pie chart and then developing the strategic plan that the person will be able to follow as they progress through their coaching program. That's why we don't just do singular standalone coaching sessions. We usually help the person develop a program and then take them through the program and keep them accountable to actually taking the steps along the path. That's something that is also distinct between coaching and consulting. The consultant may tell their clients, okay, well, this is what you need to do. This is how you do it. Go. If the coach does that, it's almost guaranteed that their clients will not do what they've been told to do, because people rarely do what they're told to do, because they often get distracted or forget, or just simply have internal resistance to authority telling them what to do. So they have to make their own decisions. They have to make a commitment to pursuing a particular course of action. And that's what our next webinar is going to be about. Until then, have a wonderful couple of weeks. I will see you in your coaching sessions, and also we will have apprenticeship circle. Until then, namaste.